Hello everyone, welcome to the Eocafe where the Eo community meet. Good to see you all again. Today it's International Forest Day, so we're going to be talking about forests, everything to do with forest certification. For those of you who haven't joined us before, just the rules of engagement. Please, if you can put your name and organization into your video, that's good. Keep your microphones off unless I specifically ask you to join in the chat. But feel free to leave your camera on. It's always good to see people. If you've got a question or a comment or anything to share, please put it into the chat. And if it's a question that we take, I'll ask you to join us and open up your microphone and put the question yourself. So that's about it. Without further ado, last week I attended the Copernicus conference in Brussels on forests, where the main focus of the discussion was around the EUDR, what it means for the various stakeholders. And in a certain, we're going to be talking about that today. EUDR was introduced in 2022. There was a lot of discussion around it, including in our community. There was an ERSC working group, which is still active, discussing the views of the industry and how these could be represented. But forest owners, the certification organizations, and most of the stakeholders have been looking to see how EUDR is going to affect their business and their operations. It's being introduced and I think will be mainly effective by the end of this year, but I'll be corrected on that later. And it aims to guarantee that products imported into the EU do not contribute to deforestation. So they are based on sustainable forestry. And in the workshop, a lot of the discussion was around degradation rather than actual deforestation. And these products include various agriculture crops as well as timber crops. And it's not just about timber; it's about other palm oil or other products which are produced on land which may have been cleared. The content, the obligations of the EUDR are going to require certification organizations such as the PEFC that we'll hear about to rework their standards, and we're interested to see how that's going to impact on the capacity for verification and monitoring and for the data that's required in order to support that, particularly from the Earth observation perspective. So what does that all mean for our sector? I'm very pleased to be joined today by Rob Shaw. Rob is the Senior Integrity Manager at PEFC International, and Luc Filan, who is in Romania and leads PEFC in Romania. And we'll explore a little bit the way that PEFC works as we go along. So maybe Rob, Lucien, I can ask you just to introduce yourselves to the audience so that people have a better idea of who you are, what your background is, and how you come to be where you are. Rob?
Yes, no, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for that. So I'm a forester by academic learning, graduated from Aberdeen University in Scotland in forestry back in the 1980s, which gives you a clue as to how old I am. And then I spent 25, 26 years working in commercial forestry, mainly in the UK, but also elsewhere in Europe, heavily involved in certification from the beginnings of certification in both FSC and PEFC. And for the past 8 years, I've been technical manager at Soil Association Certification, which is one of the world's top 4 certification bodies, which specializes in forestry. And I am also trained as an auditor and a trainer in auditing both forests and what we call chain of custody. So that's the track and trace process, which takes logs from the forest and then turns them into various products, paper, cardboard, packaging, furniture, etc. So I've audited around the world on most continents, both certified forests and also factories which make things out of trees. So I joined PEFC in this new role back in October last year, and since then I've been pretty much focused along with my colleagues on aligning our systems with the EUDR. So that's where I am currently. So nice to meet everybody.
Okay, so we'll understand a bit more about that. You said FSC and PEFC. Can you just decrypt those for people?
Yes, certainly. Yeah. So FSC stands for Forest Stewardship Council, and PEFC is the program for the endorsement of forest certification. So between those two organisations, they're by far the biggest voluntary forestry certification schemes. In terms of hectarage, PEFC is bigger. We have roughly 280 million hectares certified. But we work as an umbrella alliance organization. So as Lucian will explain, each national sovereign country has its own PEFC organization.
Yeah. So that's a good handover then. So Lucian,
there you go.
just introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Rob. So I'm Lucian Filijan, and I'm currently the president of PEFC Romania. I first came to PEFC Romania like 5 years ago as a Secretary General, and after that I managed to play the role in the last year of a president of PEFC Romania. I'm also a forester. I graduated in 2009 in Brașov University. And starting then, I was much closer to the industry and then to forest. So I worked more on the industry part. And then from that point, like already Rob introduced the chain of custody standard, I start working with this part of the certification with the chain of custody. So I became more acknowledged about what certification is. And when the opportunity came that PEFC Romania searched for a Secretary General, I was the right person at the right time, let's say. So very happy to be part of this beautiful family that PEFC is. Yes, we are a family of members. So each country has its own association, let's say, of associations or other members that are then going up the chain from bottom to up, like PEFC is promoting, so the bottom-up approach. And this is how we are being managed. So we like to be this family. We work together with other countries. We have projects together. We communicate very well, and we try to bring the light and the right image that the forests deserve.
So you're Romanian based. It's a Romanian organization which is sort of part of the PEFC family. You gather together the stakeholders in Romania in order to offer them the access to the process to support certification. Is that broadly correct?
Yes. So the first let's say step is, of course, to decide what organization will be, or who the organization will be that will manage the system. And then we have to create the national standard. So there is a benchmark standard with, let's say, a minimum imposed by PEFC International that is, again, discussed at international level with all the members. So first of all, we start from there, but we are adapting this to our countries, our needs, our legislation, our forests. So we have to develop this national standard in order to go with it to be assessed at international level. Okay.
So then at the international level, Rob, what does PEFC provide to the members in the different countries? What's the role of the sort of international organization?
Yeah, so the international office is in Geneva in Switzerland, and we are about 23 personnel there. So there's an overriding governance role. So as Lucian says, for forest management, we have an international benchmark standard, of which all the national systems then design themselves off. And the chain of custody standard is one global standard. So we have a technical unit, which I work very closely with, and we run the international database. So we collect all the data on the certification scheme, which companies are certified, which forests are certified, and that goes into an international database. And we're now developing the whole integrity systems around making sure that data is all filled in and it's all robust. And then we have a coordination of complaints and appeals. The other big task, which is coordinated out of Geneva, is marketing, communications, and outreach. So there's a team there which coordinates through the website and other social media and events the international face of PEFC. And our colleague Maya is also online, who's based in Brussels. She is part of the international team, and for example, she takes part in communications and lobbying with the European Union. So there's a range of functions around making sure the alliance and the family, is functioning as one, and that similar issues are being discussed around the world.
When you're establishing a database and the various processes, those are done with the national bodies, I would presume. Do you have direct contact with large international forest owners or companies which are dealing in forest products like maybe IKEA or these sorts?
Yes, we do. IKEA are very much FSC heavy, and that's part of their culture. So you'll find that different companies and different countries, in fact, around the world have different leanings, either towards FSC or towards PEFC, or both at the same time. You mentioned databases. We have around 12 databases in the PEFC family, and part of my job going forwards is to try and rationalize that and come up with a data strategy, and EUDR has been one of the catalysts for this. So within our databases, yes, we have data on which organizations are certified, which products they make, which forests are certified, and then this all links up so that in the supply chains in the real world, companies will be checking our database to find out who's certified, and then they'll be checking which forests are certified to try and source certified material from those forests. It's important to note that there aren't enough certified forests in the world, so quite a lot of the raw material which enters the system is what we call controlled. So the forests themselves aren't certified, but when the logs and the material leave the uncertified forests, they have to jump through a series of hoops in terms of legality and other criteria to be able to be mixed with certified material. So, and that's the same in any forestry voluntary certification scheme. So EUDR has put another layer of complexity over and above this, whereby the European Union has written its own set of rules. And fortunately for PEFC, we already meet about 80% of those. So what we're doing is we're meshing in the words into our standards to make sure that our processes will align with the EUDR requirements.
Okay, let's try and understand that a bit. But firstly, I wanted to just try to understand what it means to be certified by PEFC. I guess it's similar for FSC, but we're really talking about PEFC processes.
Sure.
So a forest owner in Romania who is looking to prove that the timber he's selling is sustainable, is certified. How do they do that? How do they do that, Lucien?
I always like to make this parallel between a question: how clean is your house? You can say yourself it's clean enough, or it's cleaner than yours, or make all kind of comparison. But until someone else that is independent of me or you is coming to your house and check and drill bed everywhere to see, is it dust there? Everything is right, like you say. So from this point of view, certification is working with these certification bodies that are independent of us, and they are accredited by themselves. So they are the ones who are doing the audits, and they are the ones who issue the certificate and have also the power to terminate that certificate.
Reject.
So us as a standardized body, we make the standard, but then the job of checking the complexity of forestry is going to the certification body.
Okay. So you're monitoring what's happening. The forest owner is informing you of what he's doing. You're validating the processes that he's using.
Most of the time, all the communication is going through the certification body. So not always. Sometimes we do communicate directly with the forest owner, but not always, because we are talking about maybe thousands of tens of thousands of owners that own small surfaces of forest in the world. So it's impossible actually to contact everyone and to do this for everyone. So we, as PEFC Romania, we have to communicate very well with the certification body. So they are the ones that are actually feeding us with information. If we need more, then we go to them, and through them we go to the forest owner.
Okay. And in relation to regulations in Romania, so I mean, we did a SEBS case looking at clear-cut monitoring in Sweden. There were 330,000 forest owners, and they inform the agency when they're doing a clear cut, and that is monitored using satellite data now for 20 odd years now. How does that process work in Romania?
The system is extremely complex. We had this management planning way of doing things from communist era. So we inherited all this after the revolution, and it was very hard to split the state forest by the private forest owned. So right now everybody have to apply pretty much the same rules. So the owner cannot say by himself if and where and when to clear cut or whatever kind of work he want to do in the forest. So everything is in the management plan, that it's a plan for 10 years. It's a very technical, let's say like a Bible for forest, right? So it's right there, it's saying, okay, you can do that in the 7th year of the management plan. You can go and clear cut 1 hectare of forest from your surface. So they cannot do it by themselves. Right now, actually, it's a very important day for us because the new forest code of Romania is going to the parliament. So we will have a new forest code very soon. And the things are, of course, evolving and changing all the time.
Okay. So let's we were talking about EUDR, and you started explaining, Rob, about the impact on PEFC and the processes and the certification process. Stepping back, how has EUDR impacted on PEFC? You've been in discussion, I'm sure, a lot with the Commission throughout the whole process, and trying to ensure that it was as aligned as far as possible with what you're doing. How's it impacting what you're doing?
Yes, certainly. So before EUDR, there was EUTR, the European Union Timber Regulations. So in the forest industry, this is not so new. It's new for the cocoa and coffee and other commodity industries which haven't seen this before. The big game changer is the introduction of the requirement for geolocation data and harvesting date range data. So what that means in practice is that for most areas of harvesting, whether that be a clear fell or individual trees, there have to be now data points, GPS data points, or a polygon shape created, which shows which part of the forest was being felled or where the harvesting was coming from, and then the start and finish dates of that activity. And there's also other changes, more finesse changes coming into the wording. So the introduction of FPIC for indigenous peoples, for example, is another layer on the top of the complexity. So I'm heading up a data task force within PEFC to look at the impact of this geolocation and date data. And my colleagues and myself are also working on the wording, the normative wording changes within our due diligence system standard. PEFC's always had due diligence system complicated requirements, or comprehensive requirements from the very beginning. So that's nothing new to us. The challenge we're finding with the geolocation data is that this is a huge data set, and especially outside the European Union, the supply chains don't have any legal obligations on them, but the operator, the person who then imports the product or the material into the European Union, has to go back down that supply chain and find out where all the forests, where the raw material came from. So the next step, which you alluded to at the beginning, was that geolocation data is then taken and analyzed using EO, technology to make sure that if it's forest now, then it remains forest in the future. So it's not subject to deforestation, in other words, conversion to agriculture, or degradation, which is a much tougher nut to crack. I mean, degradation means reduction in biodiversity, reduction in key species, a dumbing down of the forest itself. And all of you online who work in this industry will realize that writing an algorithm to look at that is actually quite complicated. And we're in active discussion with several EO tech companies about partnership collaborations to weave into their systems the PEFC requirements.
And degradation was talked a lot at the workshop, and that really is a particular challenge. Are there are thresholds set, or how is you sort of talked about the processes of degradation? What determines whether a forest is deemed to have degraded or not?
Well, this is the $1 million question. All we can go on right now is the EU have written definitions within the regulations, and so this is something that's going to be tested over the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, there's lots of rumors flying around right now, nothing official, that the implementation dates might be delayed, because I think it's now dawning on everybody that the data sets here are enormous. If you take an international group, for example, the Kingfisher Group, which owns several DIY chains across the UK and Europe, some of these stores have 15,000 product lines in them, which are made out of wood. And to follow those products back to the forest means tens of thousands of polygon data sets. And the way the regulation is going to be enforced is that within each EU country, a government agency will take responsibility for checking a proportion of these data sets going into the future to see if deforestation or degradation has occurred. But sorry for the big long answer, but to cut to the chase, degradation, for example, in Indonesia or Malaysia, could be that you're looking for a specific species of tree. So I've audited in Borneo, for example, where Meranti trees are individually tagged in the forest, and they're taken out one by one. And if they're not replanted, then the amount of Meranti within that forest will reduce over time. So that's one very easy example of degradation.
Okay, but then you're monitoring replanting.
Well, this is where the forest management comes in, because the well-managed forests will be making sure that they don't degrade their forests. And within the voluntary certification schemes, what we do is, if a forest is PEFC certified, they've jumped through a whole lot of hoops and been externally audited by a certification body to check that they're doing the right thing. So the challenge now is the uncertified forests, which may be being well managed but have no third-party audit to prove it. They will be subject to checks going into the future to see whether or not that forest is staying the same, getting better, or getting worse. And EO technology will play a huge part in that.
Okay, I want to come on to that next, but just firstly, in Romania, You're sort of on the ground there, Lucian, so you're ensuring that these processes are followed and met. Presumably, you work with an agency in Romania that would be probably, I assume, the one that Rob you referred to will be responsible for overseeing this. How does that sort of impact? How does that work on the ground in Romania, but in other countries as well?
I honestly think that pretty much in Europe, the risk of deforestation and maybe even degradation is pretty low. So according to the EUDR definition, we don't consider that this kind of problems really appear in our managed forests. The real problem is coming when you have to go all over the world, because this legislation is not only for Romania or for Europe. It's aiming more, from my point of view, outside Europe. So for the countries that are really actually doing this kind of work to deforest the ground and then to have agricultural there. So to follow this, and for us, and in forestry, at least we have one level of traceability, because we had this pressure on wood many years ago already. So we know more or less what to do. And I don't think it's such a big problem. But when we talk about soy or cocoa or other commodities that are included in EUDR, then I really don't know what they're going to do. And our colleagues from other countries like Australia or USA or Canada really said that, well, I hope that Europe is prepared to starve a little bit, because for sure these commodities will not come to Europe that much anymore, because they will prefer not to export in Europe. Okay, we will take it in China or in Russia or whatever, right? So this is actually the risk that I don't know how much our European leaders did consider in the very close future, that actually these commodities will stop coming to Europe. And then the pressure, of course, will come to our forest, our local forest, because if you don't bring wood from other countries from outside Europe, then you probably still need to bring this on the market somehow. You will still need paper, you will still need construction material, and so on. So then the pressure will be on our forests, the local ones that we try to manage. I will show you something very shortly, if I can share the screen.
I think you can just share your screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you can see it, right? So this is Inspector Paduri, the forest inspector.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is something that Romanian state actually developed in the last years. It's called SUMAL, and SUMAL, actually all these dots that you can see here are plots of forests that have been this brown. That means have been cut already. So there were already work there. And this is very close to my city of Sibiu, where I live. And if you go back, you can see how much number we are talking about. Okay, for Romania, it's easy. We already have the locations that the other country are struggling with right now because of this system already in place. We know exactly the plot. I can go here and I can see what species, what volume, everything is here. The information is public. It's not very hard to find. But the amount of information, actually the server is really struggling to put all these numbers, and we are talking only the plots that are being harvested in 1 year. It's not the whole century, right?
Okay.
So you can imagine that all this data needs to be in a system somewhere at European level for the entire world. And I don't think they ever thought about this. So we are talking about tens of thousands only in Romania. And this is only from the beginning of the year. So it's a lot. There are small surfaces and so on. We don't have to think that this means all this is clear cut or anything like that. So there are also all kinds of management work that foresters are doing in the forest. But it's possible, yes, but to scale it up will be very hard. And I don't know if we will be able to do it as Europe is seeing that we can. And not only that, the question is actually why? Do we need this? I don't know. They think we are, but maybe we don't. This is something that we actually think we need to think about. Do we need this to be that clear? Do we need to know exactly from where it's coming from? Or do we need just an area?
That debate has presumably already taken place in establishing the EUDR. So is that sort of another reflection as to you say, is it really necessary?
Well, of course, they are very focused to go forward with it. So we lost hope of any changes. Actually, we have to do it as we can. But I wanted to point out the amount of data and that, okay, in Romania, we still have something, but there are many countries that don't have nothing actually.
Yeah, certainly on that scale. So I guess the natural direction there is the use of Earth observation. You know, in terms of global coverage, it's something that Earth observation satellite data provides. What's your perspective on the role of satellite data in this? I'm not sure, Rob or Lucien, who prefers to respond.
Yeah, I can pick that one up. So we've been approached, and I've been approached by several EO commercial companies. I don't want to name them because they may be in the room or not, but quite a few of the bigger ones are producing end-to-end software as a solution commercial products, which will allow everybody working in the supply chain, and Lucian's just illustrated there in very stark form. You know, Romania is a very wooded country. It has a very developed timber industry and very good technology, and the catalyst for the technology was previous corruption. You know, so they've ended up in a good place with a long, complicated story. But in all the EU countries, that's going to be the law. So that's going to have to happen in all 27 EU countries. They all have a differing rate and culture of digitalization. And then outside the EU, the harvesting data and the geolocation data and the polygons are all going to have to be collected and placed into databases and then shared up and down the supply chain. So the EO companies who are developing these are trying to write the software to create large databases. And then either because it's been created within the EU, for example, in Romania, or because it's been imported into the EU from China or Indonesia or wherever, the importer or the operator has to upload all of that information to the EU Information Centre, which will not be up and running, we hear now, until the autumn. And so all of those polygons and things will be available then for the monitoring organizations or the competent authorities in each EU country to check if they want to. Now, as of today, I think there's only something like 15 or 16 EU countries who've actually got their competent authority set up and preparing itself for EUDR. So some of them have got less than 9 months left and have not yet identified their own legal agency who is going to police this. So the whole thing at the moment is quite interestingly poised in terms of how it's going to work. But obviously the theory is that the EO companies, and to come back to your question, will then be able to keep track of these polygons, and then at any point in time to help defend a client against a legal action or help a monitoring organization with a prosecution, look at snapshots of that forest over time from now into the future and from now into the past to see whether that forest suffered from deforestation or degradation.
So they'd be able to flag any changes. What sort of size of polygons are we talking about?
Well, if the activity area is more than 4 hectares, then you have to define a polygon by putting data dots around it. If according to the regulations, the activity area was less than 4 hectares, you can use a single data point. The other issue is that the EU is pointing everybody at free to air, you know, Copernicus and other free to air satellite imagery. I'm hearing within the industry that some of the pixelation and some of the resolution, you guys will know the technical terms better than me, aren't good enough to actually look at and be definitive about what the regulation actually requires. So I know that some of the EO operators are combining different satellite imaging information to get a better resolution.
Yeah.
And you know, the information you can glean now around the world from satellite imagery is quite amazing. You know, we can all zoom in on Indonesia and look at, you know, individual trees in plantations, so it's quite incredible. As Lucian's saying, probably the effort here needs to be directed at the high-risk countries. But at the moment, the EU is saying that it can't publish and finish its country benchmarking system. So they're going. So the rumor is that they're going to start everybody off as standard risk on the 1st of January or the 31st of December. So that then creates a whole extra layer of work for all those countries who thought that they might be low risk, because there's a different nuance and a different impact in terms of whether a country is labeled as low risk, standard risk, or high risk. So yeah, sorry for the big long explanation, but at the moment we're all in a sort of soup of uncertainty, because it's very hard for people to make concrete plans and make software investments when the EU still has to provide different parts of the jigsaw.
Yeah. So there will be a strong reluctance to put in place systems until it becomes clearer the exact timeline and the what the end point at any point in time is. Just a reminder to everyone: if you want to put any questions, please feel free to do so. Just jot it into the chat, and then we can pick it up. Is within Romania, Lucian, is there a role there for the satellite data? You've got a pretty advanced database. Is that's been established through the planning and individual inputs, I presume. So will that now be updated using satellite data, or is satellite data less useful in that situation?
Well, yes, I mean, the state is going forward with this development of SUMAL 0.3. Actually, we are at the third level right now. They are starting to develop the third part, when satellite data will be much more used. And actually, they are going to also scan the forest with LiDAR and to use drones and planes to do it. So they are really going deeper into it. But the problem, like Rob already said, it's about how focused are the images. Because if you are going to the free available imagery, then they are not that great when you are talking about exactities. Okay, you can see a deforested area, but degradation probably not, because you don't know exactly what is happening there. So if somehow it's happening that a few trees are disappearing from the forest, you have then to compare it with the legal harvesting, actually. So you have to be sure where to focus your control. And then there are, of course, the forest owners that are owning private forest, and they are trying to use these images for management purposes. So to see from the air better how the forest is developing, where they have diseases, where the forest is changing. So clearly it's the future from this point of view, to use satellite imagery and to use the tools that are so fast being created actually today. That's clear. The foresters are people that are pretty closed up. They are not easy to open, but in the end, technology is the way forward.
Okay, and we've sort of skirted around this question of resolution. I mean, I guess there's a certain question of channels as well, but it's mainly about the spatial resolution. Is there a consensus as to what resolution is needed? I'm hearing it's finer than Sentinel data can provide, so the free and open Sentinel data. Obviously, there are different scales of commercial data available. What sort of resolution ultimately is required?
don't know the technical data, but I know for sure that Romania is aiming more than the free data.
Yeah. There are probably people on the call who would be happy to comment on that. Let's pick up a couple of questions coming into the chat now. Firstly, I just need to scroll back from Julia Costella, who's talking about international financial institutions. Julia, do you want to come in?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Giulia. I'm based in Italy, and I work for Caribou Space as a senior research associate. Yeah, my question was about international financial institutions because um, at Caribou Space, we've been working with the European Space Agency's Global Development Assistance Program. And the aim of this program is to mainstream the use of Earth observation within the development operations of the banks, World Bank, Asian Development Banks, and other development banks. And one focus area is, of course, forestry. So we've been involved in one of the activity of this GDA, which is GDA for forestry, and the precursor program, which was Earth observation for sustainable development, still in the forestry area. So we have a lot of let's say, expertise with the client states, stakeholders, and their gaps. I mean, their requirements and what are the gaps for using Earth observation for forestry management. So I was wondering if you also had the chance to work with closely with the World Bank, or with the Asian Development Bank, or with other development banks and their client states to support forestry projects.
Yeah, sure. I can pick that one up. Thanks, Julia. We actually have a pilot project that we're working up right now with USPA to look at EUDR and to look at geolocation and also the analysis of potential for deforestation or degradation. But in the past and ongoing, PEFC does have engagement with financial institutions and has done specific projects in different countries. The other thing is the financial institutions and lots of private investment houses are now getting very heavily into sustainable investment. And so as part of the criteria for lending money, they're often now signposting people to certified forests or certified afforestation and logging, etc., as one of their must-haves. So that whole market is spiraling upwards very rapidly. And without going down a rabbit hole, carbon trading is one of the big drivers of that. And of course, Earth observation technology can help very much, with other technology measuring systems to demonstrate that the carbon which people say is there is actually there. There have been some pretty bad publicity items around carbon trading recently, but that's a whole other topic. But yeah, that's a growing market. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Julia, and good to see you, Jeff. Jeff Smith, digging a little bit deeper into. Was asking earlier about the properties. Jeff? Jeff? No?
Yep. Hi. I'm an Earth observation consultant rather than a forester or anything like that. But I mean, if you're looking at things that are 4 hectares, then certainly Sentinel data can easily map a 4-hectare feature. But I think probably what the key issue is the subtlety of these changes that you're wishing to map. If you're mapping clear felling, that's relatively straightforward. But if these subtleties of degradation, and I just wondered if you had some more ideas about that. I mean, how subtle are these features? Are they individual trees? Are they the health of the individual trees that you're interested in? Because I think that might be the challenge, rather than this spatial extent. And then that might then come round to timing and availability and how how regular areas are imaged. But yeah, just more about degradation, I guess, is my question.
Sure, yeah, no, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I don't have the definition in front of me, but my colleague Maya is also online. She could maybe help if needs be. But the degradation statement within the regulations, I think, is talking about the whole ecology of the forest. So you could be looking for damage to water courses or diffuse pollution, or as I mentioned earlier, like stripping a forest of a particular species. Mm-hmm. So and that can have knock-on effects, obviously, for animal and bird species and the whole food chain and the whole dynamics of the system within the forest. So you really, in tropical areas, you really need to have almost individual tree view, which I've certainly seen quite a few of the EO companies can achieve this, and that I think that's needed, and also to overlayer with other GIS information in terms of statutory designated areas and other ecosystem information, so you can turn layers on and off to try and get a more deeper understanding of what's happened to that forest. And the problem is right now is somebody's written a definition of what degradation is, but it remains for case law to appear for this to be tested going forwards. And we're not just talking here about hot tropical countries. I mean, Canada, for example, has been named, in some circles as a country which potentially would not be low risk or standard risk for a whole range of reasons. So that then becomes a political argument, is how the EU is going to benchmark these countries and say, well, who's low risk and who's high risk. So
and also EUDR is going beyond deforestation and degradation. It's going also to relevant legislation. So then you have human rights, you have work, you have all kinds of legislation that you have to be attentive at when you are buying these commodities that you cannot see from satellite, right? So that's corruption, that's other problems that you have to check. So actually the companies that are going to do this DDS are very afraid of the small mistakes that they can do in the end, because when you collect from your suppliers that are coming many times from countries as the legislation you don't know, actually they will just give you a lot of papers covering themselves, but for sure you will not know. So that's why certification is so important, because then you can base your DDS on a country where you know that people, that auditors are going, that are prepared people, that know the local legislation, they are doing their audits. And then if they say it's fine, then it's fine, but you cannot do it yourself because you will not know the legislation from the entire this world. You can imagine.
And I guess density is an important parameter. Would that be?
In terms of the number of stems per hectare?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're talking about degradation, I mean, if there's a certain thinning of the forest going on, then that would lead to degradation, or could lead to degradation.
Yeah, this is a sort of a, it's how long is a piece of string. I mean, if you're talking about plantation forestry, then the number of stems per hectare is quite predictable, and then if you're on a thinning regime, you can demonstrate good practice, but you're always at the vagaries of wind and fire and other damaging factors, which would not be classed as degradation or deforestation because they're natural events. However, if the forest required to be replanted afterwards, that would be something that could come into the system. But for all the different forest types around the world, and for all the different harvesting and management systems, you could be working at the individual tree level and the individual species level. So it's really difficult to sort of come up with a rule of thumb, So
they are saying degradation is the change of natural forest, like implantation for a forest or a planted forest. So when you talk about Finland or you talk about Canada, they are actually, in Canada for sure, are harvesting a natural forest that is there for ages, and then they clear cut it and come and plant maybe the same species, right? But that means that is degradation for EUDR. So the question is, we are considering this as being sustainable managed forest because the forest is still there for ages to come. but EUDR says you cannot destroy the natural forest, right? The one that was there before. So
Tricky.
it's pretty hard. Yeah, it's tricky.
Okay. Okay. Wolfhard is raising the relevance of SAR data. Wolfhard.
Yeah, for what's happening in Canada, and well, yes, I can absolutely confirm that. That is a huge issue here, and it's shoved under the carpet by all kinds of policies saying, well, you just, as you said, replant the same species, and that we're fine. We're nature again. So, and this is something we really need to monitor, not only in Canada. But when it comes to degradation, when it comes to degradation in terms of thinning forests or disappearing species, my hope still is, and let's get to the topic now, my hope still is that we can make better use of a multi-sensor approach, including SAR for that matter. A SAR being used as an indicator, like you have this tip and cue application for maritime patrol. You use a lesser resolution SAR image to detect ships, and then you follow up with another satellite, higher resolution, or even with aircraft, and a very dedicated path, and which saves a lot of money and a lot of time. And when we use SAR, I'm thinking of INSAR. Unfortunately, Sentinel-1, of course, is not the typical INSAR sensor. It's not bistatic, let alone multistatic. But still, from even monostatic coherence and combining coherence from monostatic repeat pass interferometry with amplitude data, you can get at the more or less Sentinel resolution a very precise image of what is changing in the forest. You can even, to a certain degree, monitor certain species compositions of a forest. So that's what I'm putting a lot of hope into. And especially with the next generation Sentinel coming, and the idea of making that bi or multistatic by adding small satellite companions, I think we have a tool that at least serves as an indicator. So that would be my comment, and open to question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to respond to that. Obviously, I don't have the technical satellite knowledge of you guys, but the whole forest industry is undergoing digital transformation at the moment, and there are lots of digital products coming in for commercial companies to manage their forests. You know, including satellite and LiDAR and all sorts of measuring and monitoring systems. The danger here is that we'll end up swimming in data, and the EUDR really need to be very strict, and some of the operators within the forestry certification world are trying to encourage standardization of the geolocation data and other monitoring systems. And I feel that this will eventually come into the auditing world, to the certification bodies, because they need to transform their auditing practice. You know, as a recent auditor, it's very paper-based, and there's not much digital transformation happening within that industry. And so the whole supply chain of auditing forests and moving data around and sharing it and coming up with information and making decisions has a whole transformation journey to go on in the next 5 years or so. And EUDR will be a major catalyst for this. The problem is with the timescales that forests take to regrow themselves. You know, in around the equator, it could be 7 to 8 years. In northern Canada, it's 100 years. So we have all these legal definitions, but we need to measure them, and we need to come up with, you know, decisions. Sorry, Wolfhard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but do you see the possibility of using even, say, a lower resolution in terms of somewhere between 5 and 15 meter resolution that don't pick up individual trees, especially when you look at northern Canada, having a boreal forest with very thin tree diameters, but still use that as an indicator. So at least for auditing, we can monitor change, especially using, again, all weather day and night radar interferometry, using that as an indicator, and then say, okay, well, there's a trouble spot. Let's follow up on this even from the air or with higher satellite data, which would speed up the whole process. Although I do agree, this is not equally applicable to tropical and boreal forest. So we need to work on the regulators as well to make them understand, well, you have to be more practical. I understand that too, yes.
Yeah, sure, I absolutely agree. And my understanding is that quite a lot of the software being developed is relying on AI to look repeatedly at these images and, as you say, like identify the risk areas and then alert people to, look, there might be a problem here, and therefore we dive in deeper. And I don't know how the monitoring organizations within the EU are going to deal with this. The EU is going to have to think about this very carefully, because ultimately in 2026, 2027, they will be looking to prosecute somebody to send a message, and if regulation is never enforced, what's the point of it? So yeah, it's an interesting proposition.
Just wanted to say sorry, but I have to jump in another meeting that is pretty important because I am the host. So it was very nice to be part of you guys. And if you have other questions, please email or whatever, LinkedIn to me. I will respond with all the interest and my pleasure.
Thank you very much for your participation. I think we're just winding down anyway, but that's great. Thank you, and we'll stay in touch. Bye. Okay, Rob. I think we can probably wind down now. Unless anyone has got any. Well, no, the time is up anyway. So, thank you very much indeed for being with us, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I think it's a complex topic. I think there's a lot of questions that come out, which will need to be addressed, and maybe there will be delays to the enforcement, the actual coming into operation. There's the Earth Working Group, which is still looking at this question. So I guess it's something that we may even come back to. But thank you very much for your time today in helping us to understand better what's going on and what Earth observation can do to help. Okay, still reminders for the industry survey. Please, if you're in any way working in the EO services sector, please do respond to the survey. It really is incredibly important to get that data. It helps the policymakers understand what's going on and design new programs and new projects, their policies. In 2 weeks' time, we're going international again. We're looking at the Digital Alliance. We'll talk with DG INPA about the activities that are going on in relation to the Latin America and the Digital Alliance that's been formed. You're aware of some of the activities going on there, but we'll dig much deeper into what's happening and what opportunities are emerging from that for the sector. So join us again in 2 weeks' time, and it just remains to thank Rob and thank everyone again for joining us today, and hope it's been interesting and useful to all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoyed it. And can I just say finally, if anyone out there is making a commercial solution for this, please get in touch. I'd love to talk to you.
Oh, there's an invitation. Yeah, good. I mean, people can probably find you directly, but we can also pass on contact details if you wish. Anyone on the call, just contact Tanya, and we can put you in contact.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what we normally do now is sort of just turn off the recording, allow anybody just to join in even more informally.